Think of the movies. Think of the stories your parents told you. They all describe a brotherhood, a rivalry between a god of thunder and a god of mischief. We've been conditioned to see them as a family that simply fell apart. But the history buried in the ancient poetic Eddas tells a story that is far darker, far more political, and infinitely more tragic. It wasn't a choice of adoption that brought Loki into the golden halls of Asgard. It was a desperate, bloody pact made in the shadows of a dying age. And the mistake Odin spent eons trying to hide wasn't Loki himself. It was what Loki created and the brutal way Odin chose to destroy it. We begin not with a golden throne, but with a bowl of blood. Long before the walls of Asgard were finished, Odin and Loki stood alone in the wilderness. They weren't brothers by birth. They were brothers by choice. In a ritual that the Aesir gods would later try to strike from history, they cut their palms and let their blood mingle in the earth. They swore a blood oath, a sacred bond that meant Odin would never drink a single drop of ale unless Loki was served beside him. This wasn't a gesture of friendship. It was a survival pact. Odin, the Allfather, saw in Loki a mind that worked where his spear failed. He needed Loki's chaos to balance his order. But in every contract signed in blood, there is a hidden cost. And for Odin, that cost was a prophecy that would eventually turn his blood brother into his greatest nightmare. While the gods were busy building their paradise in Asgard, Loki was living a double life. He frequently disappeared into the Jarnvidr, the Iron Wood. This was a place of perpetual twilight, a dark, twisted forest where the trees were made of metal and the inhabitants were giants. There, in the shadows, Loki found Angrboda. She wasn't just a giantess, she was the mother of calamities. Together they fathered 3 children. To the world, these were not children. They were nightmares made flesh. To Loki, they were his legacy. But to Odin, watching from his throne, they were the 3 gears of a clock ticking down to his own death. The first was Fenrir, a wolf pup whose eyes held an intelligence that no animal should possess. The second was Jormungandr, a serpent whose scales dripped with a poison so potent it could dissolve the very foundations of the soul. And then there was the third, a girl named Hela. Imagine a child born into a world of perfection, yet she was anything but. Hela was born half perfect and half rotten. On her right side, she possessed the face of a radiant goddess, beautiful, glowing, and full of life. But on her left side, she was a corpse. Her skin was the blue-black of decaying flesh. Her eye was clouded with the film of death, and she smelled of the grave. She was the physical manifestation of the boundary between the living and the dead. While Thor was being groomed for a throne and polished in the light of Asgard, these 3 were being raised in the damp cold of the Iron Wood. Loki thought they were safe. He thought his blood oath with Odin protected his family. He was wrong. Prophecy is a heavy burden, and Odin carried it like a shroud. The Völva, the seers of the Norse world, whispered a terrifying truth into Odin's ear. They claimed that the children of Loki and Angrboda would be the ones to swallow the sun, poison the sky, and bring the end of everything. Odin, the man who had famously sacrificed his own eye to the well of Mimir just for a glimpse of the future, was now paralyzed by fear. He stood at a crossroads of morality. Does he honor the blood oath he made to his brother, or does he commit an atrocity to save his kingdom? History tells us that Odin chose fear. The betrayal didn't happen with a declaration of war. It happened in the dead of night. While Loki was away, Odin sent his elite forces, or perhaps, as some whispers suggest, he went himself, into the Iron Wood. They snatched the children from their mother's arms. They didn't kill them. In the twisted logic of the gods, death would have been a mercy. Instead, Odin decided to manage them. He chose a fate for each child that would eventually turn them into the very monsters he was trying to prevent. This is the moment the golden age of Asgard ended, and the countdown to Ragnarok truly began. Odin's treatment of the sons was the first crack in the foundation. He took the great serpent, Jormungandr, and hurled him into the deep, icy circle of the world's ocean. He didn't kill the snake. He simply discarded it. Can you imagine the psychological toll of such a thing? A creature whose only sin was existing, left to grow in the absolute darkness of the abyss. Isolated and cold, Jormungandr grew until he was so large he had to bite his own tail just to hold the earth together. He became a prisoner of his own size, nursing a venomous hatred for the father who threw him away. Then came Fenrir. Odin brought the wolf to Asgard, pretending to show him mercy. He allowed the wolf to run through the streets, but as Fenrir grew, so did Odin's paranoia. The gods began to play games with him. They tried to bind him in heavy iron chains, telling the wolf it was merely a test of his legendary strength. Fenrir, wanting to please the family of his father, broke every chain. But the gods were not playing. They were building a cage. When the final chain, Gleipnir, was forged from impossible ingredients, the sound of a cat's footsteps, and the breath of a fish, Fenrir finally smelled the betrayal. He demanded a sacrifice of trust. He told the gods he would only be bound if one of them put their hand in his mouth as a guarantee. Only Tyr, the god of war, had the courage to do it. When the chain held, and Fenrir realized he was trapped forever, the gods laughed. They didn't just bind him. They jammed a sword between his jaws to keep him from screaming. Fenrir was left bound to a rock, bleeding and silenced for thousands of years. But as brutal as the treatment of the sons was, it paled in comparison to what Odin did to the girl. Odin looked at Hela, the half-dead girl, and he didn't see a child. He saw a mirror of his own mortality. He didn't throw her into the sea, and he didn't chain her to a rock. He did something far more psychological. He exiled her to the realm of Niflheim, the land of fog and eternal soul-chilling cold. He gave her authority over the dead, but only those who died of unworthy causes, the sick, the old, and the forgotten. He made her the queen of the dishonored. Think about the cruelty of that gift. He took a young girl and told her that her only companions for all of eternity would be the ghosts of those the world had cast aside. He forced her to become the very monster her face suggested she was. He built a wall around her realm and called it Hell. From that day on, Hela ceased to be Loki's daughter. She became the goddess of death. She didn't scream like Fenrir, and she didn't thrash like Jormungandr. She waited. She sat on a throne, made of human misery, nursing a grievance that was older than the stars. Odin thought he had solved his problem by giving Hela a kingdom, but all he really did was give her an army. When Loki returned to find his children gone, one at the bottom of the sea, one chained in a cave, and one presiding over the dead, the trickster died. The villain was born. The history books often skip this part. They focus on Loki's mischief and his eventual role in the death of Balder. But ask yourself, if your brother kidnapped your children, and buried them at the edge of the world because of a dream he had. Would you just play a prank? Or would you burn his world to the ground? Odin spent his entire life trying to prevent the end of the world. He thought that by hiding the children, he had stopped the prophecy. But the ultimate irony of Norse mythology is that you often meet your destiny on the road you take to avoid it. By punishing Fenrir, Odin gave the wolf a reason to swallow him. By throwing Jormungandr into the sea, he ensured the Serpent would be there to meet Thor at the end. And by exiling Hela, he provided the very ships that would carry the dead to the final battle. Odin's greatest mistake wasn't the blood oath. It was the belief that power could override family. He thought he could bury his secrets in the dark, never realizing that the dark is where things grow the strongest. So, the next time you see the golden spires of Asgard in a movie, or read about the thunder of Thor's hammer, remember the truth beneath the gold. Remember the girl who was half corpse and half queen, waiting in the fog. Because Odin's tragedy wasn't that he couldn't see the future. It's that he saw it, and in trying to break it, he became the very reason it happened. The gods think they are safe because they have the light, but the dark has one thing the light can never understand. It has nothing left to lose.